And so we're going to be moving into this next panel a little bit around what are the risks side. So what's the risk of having an absent age strategy in your business? We're then going to have an innovation showcase, and one of our other great customers, Diageo, again are going to be sharing their story of how they've road-tested tech with their over 50s population. What did it tell them? What did it tell them about their future of work? And then I absolutely promise we will have you going, as we will, by 1:15 on your way to lunch, to meet, mingle, race again to the gender-neutral toilets. There was a bit of a learning for the men in the room. Welcome to our world. Not used to queuing, are you? Oh, no. You're like, whoa, 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 what do you mean there's a queue for the toilets? We're all equal in LinkedIn. And so talking of equal, I'm just going to share 3 stats that kind of tee us into this risk session. But there's a couple of comments that have come through your QR codes that I want to share. So somebody has put, I appreciate the focus here is on age, but I'm interested in what bias there is in gender, race, disability, and other intersectional characteristics. And it's fair to say, it just gets worse. So if we start with age, and we've heard today that this is a problem, we're going to continue to hear that that is a problem, any other characteristic that you overlay on that, whether that's race, whether that's gender, whether that's disability, and by the way, the majority of us acquire disability as we age. Very few people are born with a disability. We acquire it through illness, through accident, through age. But gender, just to give you a couple of stats on that point, by the time a woman hits the age of 50, her pension pot is 39% less than her male equivalent. Yet women live longer. So the imperative for women, and we hear this from our audience, particularly our jobs board audience, we had 145,000 people apply for jobs through us last year. And the midlife women are like, hang on a minute, I was told in my 20s I was too young. I've then gone away, brought up my family, and I'm like, hallelujah. My kids are like going to university, they're going to college. Now's my time. I've finally got more energy, more time than ever before. And now you're telling me to go and apply. Now, the only places I can apply are supermarkets, because I'm too old to learn a new career. It's not fair. And it's going to kill our businesses unless we solve it. So here's just 3 stats. So this is from our friends at Aging Better, not-for-profit in the UK, who recently just did some data that showed that last year, so this is last year alone, over half of over 50s experienced discrimination. The worst thing about this, though, was that the majority said it happened to them at work. You can fix that, guys. You can fix it. The second piece came from the Financial Times, who've been doing a lot of digging. Last year's quote I was famous for is, "No one's having any sex." Still my favourite quote. My husband is in the audience. But we'll come back to that later. But the quote of this particular one was around age discrimination, because they were tracking it and they were finding that the average payout in the UK is now over £100,000, which has jumped 624% in 1 year. So it was at 13,000, it's now at 106. Let me tell you, because we get to see behind all of your closed doors and kind of kick around with a few of those skeletons that are in the closets in them, that the majority of your ageism claims don't even make it to court, because you have no way of defence. If a candidate is saying, I didn't get interviewed because of my age, unless you're collecting age-related data in your recruitment processes, you cannot defend the claim. Unless you're teaching your hiring managers not to say, when are you going to retire? Or we don't want any more bald white men around here. Actual statements that we hear and have gone to court. Then you have no way of defence. So this is a huge risk. And then the third one is that our very own Natalie Hall, who you've heard name-checked a few times, and quite rightly, because Natalie's our Chief Commercial Officer, and she basically runs it. I fanny around on stages a lot. And then when you actually want some proper work done, I go, Natalie. And so all of Natalie's team, of which is about 10 or 12 people more in the team here today, work with all of our clients. But last year, she was giving evidence to the Select Committee. in the House of Lords about ageism, and particularly about gendered ageism. And the Women Inequalities report was published just a couple of months ago, and its overriding statement was our culture in the UK is pervasively ageist. And they made a recommendation that the government needs to improve its statement and its duty of care for employers about being responsible for changing this. So I would like to invite Natalie up to the stage, who's going to be introducing us to our esteemed panel. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Well, welcome everyone to this panel session, and I'm delighted to be hosting a panel with some brilliant companies here, all about the risks of an absent age strategy. As Lindsay says, I'm Natalie Hall and I'm the Chief Commercial Officer. I recognise many of you in the room and have had the privilege of working with you, and I have the privilege of hosting this panel today where we have Canada Life, AMS and Just all joining us. So to kick us off, I'm going to ask for a couple of introductions. So Keily, I'd love to start with you.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Keily Vanstone and I'm Head of Marketing for Canada Life.
Thank you.
Paul Modley, I am the Managing Director for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion and Belonging for AMS, and I am level 58 and very proud of it.
I'm Rob Ozanne, I'm Head of Product Development for the Guidance and Advice Services for Just Group, so I spend my day obsessing about people in the pre-retirement stage and how to help them make better decisions.
Amazing, thank you everyone. So we're going to take a bit of a 360 view on risk, and I suppose starting off actually at the beginning of the employee life cycle. I'd love to know, Paul, kind of what are the risks of not having an age strategy embedded within the organisation when you're thinking about recruitment?
This is easy for me. You've all done the work for me. Lindsay's kind of given you all the stats. I probably don't need to say anything else other than, you know, if you're not thinking about age in your sort of hiring strategy, then you are missing out on talent, and the statistics are so obvious. The Veolia case study is right in your face. You know, we're all aging. We are all looking at an aging workforce, and certainly, you know, if I think about myself, I don't want to retire when I get to 60 next year. I want to keep working. So you have to think about age. You have to think about how you're attracting older people into your organisation, and you have to think about, you know, talking to your hiring managers. So that's where I think a lot of the challenges sit right now, in terms of getting our hiring managers on board with thinking about age differently. But if you're not thinking about age, then you will have a problem in attracting talent into your businesses. You know, we are seeing aging workforces, that's pretty obvious. We're seeing skills shortages, and we're seeing the obvious reduction in birth rates globally. So if you don't get it and your business doesn't get that, then, you know, that's your call to action, really.
It's a fundamental future of work question, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's not a diversity issue, it's not a HR issue, this is a fundamental business issue.
Thanks, Paul. And Keily, this is a really special day for you, actually, and thank you for joining us. So today, Canada Life are launching their Life 100 report, which you will be able to download via the QR code, which I think is going to go on the screen in a moment. So we're hearing this really all hot off the press. So I want to ask you, I suppose, a question through two lenses. So what does the report tell us about what needs to change for UK business?
Yeah, so in the report we wanted to really get under the skin of UK business and listen to employers, listen to employees, and get a really deep insight around it. So we spoke to over 3,000 people, we spoke to 600 businesses of different size and scale to get this sort of input, and we had focus groups and all sorts of things. So today's the culmination of all of that insight coming to the fore. And what we've learned is that employers like yourselves understand that longevity is a really important issue and you want to do something about it, yet only 1 in 8 businesses have a longevity strategy in place, which just demonstrates what needs to happen to be able to resolve some of that stuff. We've learned that there's a bit of a disconnect sometimes between what employers think and what their employees think. And there's certainly space for co-creation of what the future in solutions might look like to that. And we've learned that people are leaving work because they can and not because they have to. And in doing so, they're walking out of things that they would benefit from in life. So people who stay longer in the workplace are healthier, they get better connections from people, they live longer, probably. I'm making that up. They do. 7.5 years, you'll live longer. And so, we've heard loads of it today, haven't we? And some brilliant solutions that are already in place, but it's certainly something that hopefully our research will help to drive some conversation and change.
And I would really add, actually, that your Life 100 report, this is the second report that you have published. Their first one was absolutely fantastic in terms of data and stats and research. So I'd really encourage everyone to check it out. And I think we'll re-put up the QR code so you can download it shortly. Oh, it's going back up. There we go already. I suppose the second part of my question really was that obviously you've learnt about what's important to UK business, but what's it telling you about the kind of the workforce and how the workforce might need to think about things differently in the face of longer working lives?
Yeah, so you'll see on the screen here beautifully that 4 pillars came out of the research in terms of what we need to focus on. The first one was around motivation, and we heard some of that from Carl this morning about the curve of happiness. We call it a curve of life satisfaction, and how it's really important for employers to tap into what those motivations are and think differently about what the solutions might be. So for younger people, as we know, climbing a career ladder, accumulating things is really important. As you get older, it shifts more to purpose. We're more interested in giving back and connection. So how can we evolve our proposition to support that? Secondly, you've got rewarding for longevity. So that talks to the more traditional routes of rewarding people. That might be salary, etc. But there's more to do in terms of other benefits that we might be able to provide. Thirdly, structuring. There's a lot of conversation in this space around structuring. So this talks to flexibility, thinking differently about how the glide path might look like into retirement. And then finally, shaping teams. That's all to do with the benefits of multi-generational working and the need for us to keep people in the age over 50 in the workplace and engaged.
Brilliant, thank you, Keily. So Robert, let's come to you now. So I suppose as more over 50s stay in the workforce, how can employers ensure that they nurture and grow them and add years to careers and help them extend their kind of working lives?
It's about having conversations about retirement many years earlier. So we've done deep dive research into Gen X and how they're different from the preceding generation and what the workforce that we're used to managing. 29% of Gen X want that traditional full-stop retirement. That means everyone else is undecided or they want a phased retirement. But they don't know how to have the conversation with companies. They don't want to mention the R word because they're worried that will impact their future opportunities, the projects that were mentioned earlier, or their remuneration. So it's on companies to start those conversations. On the financial planning side, we see people have a kind of a get serious moment somewhere between kind of 5 and 1 year to go. It kind of echoes the timescales in the Viola case study. That's where the penny drops and retirement stops becoming this future thing and it's something that's real. I'm going to have to start planning. They start exploring. They start having the financial conversation with us. If you as an employer aren't having the employment conversation with them, then you're missing out, and you will hear at 3 months to go, like Viola experienced.
Thanks, Rob. I think that, in spoiler alert, we're going to share some of the data and insights that we've learned from our Me Redefined kind of rollout, and we're absolutely kind of mirroring that, which is that employees need that support. They need that kind of guidance from employers about what the art of the possible is, and you as employers actually having that conversation earlier is really key. Paul, I'd like to come to you again. So what can employers do, I suppose, to encourage internal mobility? And the reason, I suppose, we're interested in that question, it goes to some of the stats that Adam was sharing earlier around that actually wisdom workers are more loyal and they want to stay, but they want the challenge, they want the opportunity to kind of flex. So what would you recommend kind of organisations think through when they're thinking about internal mobility?
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that stood out from Adam's and also Lindsay's talk this morning, that we do have that capacity to learn and we want to continue to develop. And so I think that opportunity to think about skills development, skills creation in your organisation, don't write people off over that age. You do have skills shortages. You don't have those people coming through the organisation. So think about those skills creation, skills development programs that you can reskill key people in your organisation and make that move across into a different part of the business. I think the reverse mentoring or mentoring programs is really, really important, and getting that sort of multi-generational working, getting younger people to reverse mentor with older people, really impactful. So if you're not doing that right now, then I would encourage you to do that. I've learned a huge amount through being mentored by younger people in my business, people of different race, different colour. Such a brilliant learning experience for me. And I think the whole thing about multi-generational working is fascinating, because we do have 4 or 5 different generations in the workplace right now, and we all do things really differently. The way that we communicate, the way that we work, the way that we think about work is all very, very different. And that's a challenge for our line managers, and we need to help them. We need to help them to understand, what is it like running multi-generational teams, and how does that work in terms of developing them, moving them across the organisation. So this is where I think the role of HR is super, super important in terms of helping our line managers to really get their heads around the role, the really important role in terms of managing multi-generational teams and helping to develop those teams so that they can think about, which way they move, whether that's a sideways move to get a new skill or to make a move upwards. So those are the sorts of things that organisations absolutely need to be thinking about.
Brilliant, Tim. Thanks, Paul. I was just picking up that thread of multi-generational teams. What did you learn in your report, I suppose, about attitudes to multi-generational working from those you surveyed?
Yeah, for older people, it came through the research that they enjoy working with younger people and they get a sense of connection and purpose from it. So thinking about the motivational curve, that's a really important thing for those people. And yet only 4 in 10 believe that they have a multi-generational workplace. So they're not feeling it necessarily in their day-to-day life, but they do feel like it's really important. And there's definitely a learning point from younger generations on what they can learn from older generations in terms of empathy and understanding and people skills that sometimes a digital generation might not have.
And was anything in there around succession planning or skills transfer that came through?
There was a bit around skills transfer, so that was more around some of the softer skills actually, which is what I was talking to. But there's just a need for more multi-generational working and for employers to talk more about it and to promote it and to talk about the benefits actually.
Brilliant, thank you. I'm going to come back now to you, Paul. So kind of like what kind of rewards and benefits and policies tend to attract and retain kind of over 50s, 50 plus talent?
I think it's just about flexibility. I think as we get a little bit older, we want to be doing potentially different things. We may not want to be working 150 miles an hour as we are right now. So kind of just thinking more flexibly around, hours of working, sort of taking block time off. We have, potentially more caring responsibilities. I have very elderly parents, so I have some challenges around that. I've got 2 children in their 20s, and it's just a little bit of a story. I had a conversation with them both on Sunday, because it's obviously Father's Day, and they unusually took me out for breakfast. And I kind of made it clear to them, because a number of my friends are really looking forward to being grandparents. That doesn't fill me with any joy whatsoever. So I made it really clear to my children, don't be thinking that I'm here as a carer or to kind of look after your kids when you decide to do it. That's just not for me. But, again, I know there are other people, my friends in particular, who want nothing more than to be the main carer of their grandchildren. So I think, again, we can't make assumptions about everybody, but I think that flexibility around how we work is super important. Many of us will have made good decisions around finances through our career. And so, again, some people may be looking for a little bit more flexibility. They may not need to be paid as much. They may be maxed out on their pension. So again, that sort of conversation needs to be happening to understand what does that mean. I've had friends who've worked in the police and fire services. They've had to retire when they get to 55 because of the regulations around the public sector pension schemes. That's ridiculous. So they're going on to do something else elsewhere. Why aren't we looking to retain those skills within our public sector organisations? So I think flexibility is a kind of key thing around how we look at reward and retaining those older workers.
Brilliant, thank you, Paul. And I suppose what did your Life 100 study reveal about attitudes to reward and benefit?
Yeah, there's some really interesting stuff around there, and I think it's to do with employee engagement. So when you introduce the concept of living to 100 to any generation, it changes their thought process around certain things, including benefits at work. So what you see is that as people think about being 100, they value more things around health and protection than they do otherwise. So it brings together a different set of conversation for employees to give them a sense of living longer, what the impact might be, and then what benefits you might need to provide as employers to support.
Thank you. And Rob, to you, I suppose, when we think about the risk associated with retirement, what are some of the pitfalls or opportunities actually when it comes to retirement and your employees?
Sure. So when someone retires, it's a little moment of truth for your company culture. Firstly, it's deeply significant for the individual, but also everyone watching is also thinking, what does this mean for me? So early in my career, I was lucky to work at an organisation that really got this right. When someone retired, there's a huge crowd gathered from all over the building. You could feel the energy kind of congregating in an area. The presentations were always personal, funny, deeply affectionate. And I stayed at that company 8 years. I've never experienced that kind of thing anywhere else. So you've got to ask yourself, if employees aren't having that experience when someone retires, what is the experience they're having, and what does that make them think about your company and their career with you?
I really like that. It's a moment of truth for your culture, that point of retirement. That's something that I'm definitely going to take away from this conversation. Thanks, Rob. I suppose also thinking around kind of what are the other risks around retirement plannings from an employee perspective? What do we need to bear in mind?
Sure. So there's life risks and financial risks that are kind of the key parts of the conversation. So from a life perspective, it's things we've discussed already, making the most of your remaining healthy years. We don't quite know how many of them there are going to be. It's difficult. But also the transition from work, so replacing that sense of purpose, the structure to the day, the social connection. On the financial side, it's things like, do I have enough money to last for the rest of my life? How much can I afford to spend in retirement? What will my lifestyle be like? When can I afford to retire? How do I avoid paying unnecessary tax? Because all the products are hideously complicated. So that's all kind of for the individual. Why is that important for for employers? Well, the alternative, or when people have a financial plan, it gives them confidence about making positive decisions about finances, life, and their relationship with work. The alternative is they're carrying around an ongoing anxiety in the back of their mind. Can I retire? Will I be okay? That's not the mindset that you want to have for someone to be productive, to do their best work, to be incentivized to train up the people that are going to replace them.
Brilliant, thank you. That's really insightful. I've got a final question to you all, and then we'll open up for some questions from the audience. But kind of what is your number one tip? What's the pitfall you need to avoid, do you think, when it comes to this topic, particularly around not having an age strategy? Keily, could I come to you first?
Yeah, I think the thing is getting started, isn't it? Because 1 in 8 companies don't have a longevity strategy. So it's how do you lean into that? And we certainly heard that employers want support in this space to try and help them to get there. So I think it's more about a call to arms for us to work together to create this new future that we can see on the horizon. And I'm level 49, and so very happy about being over 50 and what's going to come next. So it's more about how do we collaborate to sort of make real positive change.
Thank you, love that. To you, Paul?
I think when it works, it works. I was fortunate to work on the London 2012 Games for about 6 years. And we made a decision early on that for our volunteers, we needed to make sure that they were representative of the spectators, athletes, and all the other stakeholders were coming through. And part of that was making sure we had older volunteers, particularly in that sort of wayfinding when you came off a tube station into the stadium. You know, that was super, super helpful. And I know, Lindsay, you were involved in supporting the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham. So I think it works really well in that sort of customer-facing role. And we've seen it with many retailers across the UK. When it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. And just going back, and this is a kind of going back in my career, I worked in search, executive search in the late 90s. And I was when I was briefing with clients, they were probably about 8 out of 10 times, we do not want to see anybody over 40 for that head of finance or that head of IT role. Now, that's going back in time. And that's like, oh my God, you know, I was in my 20s then, and I thought 40 was ancient. No, clearly, we have clearly, you know, moved on a lot. But I still think that still exists in certain industries, certain sectors. So we have to work really hard to push that out.
Brilliant, thank you, Paul. And finally to you, Rob.
I think it's really important to remember that we're talking about individuals here. A lot of the conversation, it's the broad stats that create the picture, make the financial case. But you know, retirement, the phasing down, it's deeply personal, it's deeply significant. Everyone's financial position is different, everyone's life priorities are different and will change. And you know, as policymakers, that's really hard to kind of look at the trend, but then apply a solution that works for individuals. I think so we've got to remember that that is the priority.
Brilliant, thank you all. I'd like to open up to some questions now. We've obviously got these brilliant kind of panel participants, and I'm sure they'd love to answer any questions you have about what they've shared today. So, we have a question just here. Do we have a microphone at all, or am I going to run down with one? I can do that.
Thank you for the very interesting panel. My name is Opiemi Sofoluke and I'm the head of DEI for EMEA at Adobe. Rob, you mentioned that conversations around retirement should start earlier, but individuals don't often want to have these conversations and companies don't want to start the conversations. How early do you think these conversations should start happening? And what have you seen as the most effective strategy to really approach this topic for employers?
I can't do better than the Viola case study, but you know, I say conversation in the broadest sense. It might be providing information, showing examples. It might be tangible initiatives like an alumni network for people that want to do contracting for the company after they've officially retired. So it could be lots of different things. Depends what your policies are and what you want to get. But if you say your piece from the corporate perspective, what's available, show the examples, that creates context and normalizes the conversation to some extent. We have, with partners, run kind of retirement planning workshops to help people think through the life aspects, the financial aspects, introduce them to kind of products and services that we have to help them make those decisions and understand what it means for them. You know, that pairs very nicely with now we've helped you think about what it means for you. This is what we think about retirement, and these are our policies. Then, you know, the two sides are there to have that connection.
That's a great answer, thank you. I just wanted to also say, it sounds a bit self-serving, but you know, what we see is actually that this conversation is really hard to have. It is really hard to have, and it's hard to have because people don't know quite what they want and what their options are, and it's very difficult to start with the financial conversation around actually how much am I going to need, because I don't actually know what I want to do. So we are going to shortly show you our new platform, Redefined, which is our age intelligence, midlife and career transitions platform, which is a programme to help your 50-plus talent make a plan for their future. And we know categorically that it increases their clarity and confidence about their future. And that is really helping bridge that gap between the employer and the employee, and that really difficult conversation that, you know, both sides find challenging. So we'll share more shortly. Any other questions? Oh, Lindsay, you've got a question?
I've got questions from the
Oh, please.
Got a mic. And they're interesting, hopefully, it's one for each of you. So, question first to Keily. So, did Canada Life include their extended workforce, i.e. contractors, in their analysis for their strategy? Because knowing that in circa 5 years, 50% of workers won't be permanent.
Fascinating question, and the answer to that is no. So when we surveyed people, we surveyed 3,000 people of the UK population, so they weren't Canada Life employees, although we are listening to Canada Life voices through the campaign that we're doing and the activation of that. So yeah, we wanted to get a representative sample. It's a good question about contractors, and one that we should take away to have a think about, because I don't think that featured in how we delivered it.
We typically see that you stop receiving contractors if you've got an MSP provider after the age of 50. And so they skew generally 10 to 15 years younger in your non-permanent workforce than your permanent workforce in the data that we've analysed, which is bonkers, because obviously for contractors you're buying experience, and so again, when we've dug deep into this, if you're acquiring your contractors direct, you're buying experience. If you're acquiring through them a large recruitment MSP, the MSP's often got that perception that you don't want older talent, and so they're not fielding them through to you. Second question, and this one is for you, Rob. So the 29% of Gen X who have indicated that they want to take traditional retirement, is this because they're not aware of the alternative options and benefits available to them? How are companies promoting alternative options?
Cool. I don't have the report to hand, so I can't give you the data on that. There's definitely part of that. So we have a really good retirement planning tool, but if you look at the plans that most people create, it's based on the traditional meaning of retirement. It's like, okay, well, when's the earliest I could afford to make a full stop retirement? We're putting extra effort in to try and help them look at, well, what if I did a partial retirement? What if I did part-time? What if I retired 1 year earlier, 1 year later, and use it to its fullest extent to look at all of their different retirement options. So I think we all still think about retirement as that full stop. It's going to take a long time to redefine, so that's definitely a thing. And the second part was measures to help people...
How to promote alternative options other than retirement.
So we can debate about the language, but it's everything we're talking about, whether it's extending career or phased retirement, that needs to become a lot more visible. But the survey and research we did is that people want that. So the 71%, that 50% want the phased retirement. So we don't really have to make the case. This 21% are undecided because, well, who the hell knows what I can afford? So you don't really need to make the case. You need to start saying and inviting the conversation through what you're willing to provide, how you want to engage with people to have that conversation.
Perfect. And then the last one for Paul is a public sector question. So to attract retired doctors back to the NHS, the government substantially increased pension contribution thresholds. They also, by the way, in the NHS do a brilliant retire and rehire programme. And I'm trying to convince Unilever, who are in the audience, to come and speak in January, bit of subtle peer pressure going on here, about their wonderful UWork programme, which again is a retire and rehire programme where you come back on different terms. So the question is, what else should the government be doing to encourage more pension-age workers to stay in employment, Paul? Tricky one for you.
Good question. I think it's back to changing mindsets, that when you get to a certain age, it doesn't have to be retirement. I think we're still in that mindset generally across this country, that I think my official retirement age is 67. So I think there's still that. Government have got to work really hard in terms of policy, yes, but also thinking about how we get that mindset change across the country.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, everyone. Any final questions from the room before we close the panel session? No? Lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Keily.